Good evening. Well, one day on from confirmation of Sainsbury's plans to merge with Asda, and serious questions are being asked about the impact on suppliers. Sainsbury's has promised that once the deal is done, it will cut the price of everyday household items by 10%. It says the cost of this would be borne by multinational suppliers who account for 85% of all goods sold by the two grocers. Well, is that true? Well, I'm joined now by Lord Haskins. He's former chief executive of Northern Foods, which in its heyday made ski yoghurts, Bowyer sausages and ready meals for Marks and Spencer. Well, good evening to you, Lord Haskins. How would you have reacted to a deal like this when you were running Northern Foods?
I'd have been a bit frightened because obviously with the costs that they're planning to take out, somebody's got to pay for those costs. I'm sure they'll have cost savings within the organisation, although they've said they don't plan to shut any stores, but they've said they're going to reduce their sales prices on certain products by 10%, one of which would probably be milk, and I used to supply them with milk, so that would be trouble.
So how on earth can suppliers respond to this? I mean, ultimately, they're going to have to cut costs themselves and potentially jobs.
Yeah, I mean, what will happen is there'll be a fewer but larger suppliers is the normal thing that happens here, that some of the bigger suppliers will get even bigger because the volumes, they'll be given more volume and therefore be able to compensate for the loss of margin. But that must mean that other suppliers, either bad ones or small ones, will be squeezed out.
Well, when we spoke to Mike Coop, the Sainsbury's CEO, on last night's show, he was stressing that most of both companies' suppliers are big multinationals, the likes of Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Kraft Heinz and so forth. Do you think there's any way that they can insulate smaller suppliers from any of this pain?
Well, in technology they can. They can buy locally from small local suppliers. They can certainly do that, but it's expensive. And if the name of the game, this is entirely a defensive merger. It isn't, neither side are paying cash to the other because they don't want to put more money into the supermarket business, and they're all about cost reduction. So you have to be pretty firm and steely-minded when you want to go and cut costs.
If you were still an active participant in this situation, would you be urging the Competition and Markets Authority to be blocking this deal?
I think it's difficult under the present rules of competition at the moment. The remit is to protect the interest of consumers, and it could well be a good deal for consumers in that prices could drop, choice won't be very much affected. I think that the remit for the Competition Authority, however, should include the supply chain to make sure that we're not going to erode some very good companies as a result of mass centralisation of power into fewer and fewer hands. That has to be wrong in the long term. And I think the worm is about to turn on that, but not on this deal.
So do you think this could actually drive further consolidation among the suppliers themselves? Could you see them sort of huddling together alongside each other for warmth? I'm
sure that will happen. I mean, just as the retailers are getting fewer in number, then the suppliers will. With the exception, remember, there are new types of outlets for small suppliers. Local shops are coming back a little bit into their own. Local markets are coming back into a little bit into their own, and they can hang on to those. But for the most part, if I were in the business, I'd be making sure that my competitors in the dairy industry, if they wanted to buy my business or I wanted to buy their business, I'd be talking seriously to them.
Very interesting that you say this is a defensive move. Mike Coop was adamant yesterday that he won't close any stores as a result of this transaction. But surely the CMA are going to require store disposals, and potentially in time that could mean some stores do close.
Well, he may hope that the Competition Authority does the job for him, but they will want to, as they did with Safeway and Morrison, where they were required to sell stores to competitors. In those days, there were plenty of buyers for the stores, of course, because the market was growing. If you put stores up for sale at the moment, there aren't going to be very many people who want to buy them. One of the non-food retail chains said to me the other day that they were not going to take on any leases for property in excess of 10 years. And that tells me that they don't have much confidence in the future beyond the next 10 years. So who's going to buy these stores?
Well, goodness. I mean, you've worked in this entire industry all your working life. Can you think of any other country in which the top two grocery suppliers would have a combined market share of getting on for 60%?
No, I don't think so. There will be smaller countries with that example. I think you'll find actually that in Ireland, Tesco and Dunn's probably have got something around that share of the market. But large countries like France, Germany, the United States, no, they wouldn't have those sort of shares. Walmart have a big share in America, of course. And of course, the interesting thing is Walmart, the biggest retailer in the world, is effectively getting out of this market by taking a minority stake in this new company.
All right, Lord Haskins, we've got to leave it there. Great pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining me.